Bonjour tout le monde. I'm going to do my presentation in English, but my slide will be in French. Over the past year, the Madawaska First Nation has been meeting with the City of Edmundston, working together towards a joint economic development plan. We're doing this with the assistance of the Canadian Federation of Municipalities. The purpose, and in the process, we've actually improved our relationship between the First Nation and the municipality through knowledge, information sharing, and communication. And part of the process is getting to know each other a bit better, and by that I mean, what are the First Nations priorities, what are the city's priorities, how the government is structured, and what are our decision-making processes. And the presentation that I'm going to give to you today is one that I gave at one of the workshops with the city, and it's basically a brief overview of how our offices and administration works on the First Nation. And even though we're very small, we have a membership of about 400, not all of them are living on reserve. We still provide all the services that a big government would provide, and we have all the same departments. And at the end of my presentation, I'd just like to speak briefly about the provincial First Nation revenue sharing agreements and how it's not only important for the First Nation for these agreements to continue, but also for the City of Edmundston and all the businesses in the region. So just like any other government, we do have a mission and objectives, and as you can see, we are a multi-purpose, fully functioning office, and we have several departments that provide services to the community. Our objectives are really to create a well-qualified staff in order to better serve our community and to provide services that are effective and efficient and fiscally, financially responsible. So basically, this is the, oops.
Sorry, it's my fault.
Oh, no, okay. So basically, Chief and Council are pretty much the government of the First Nation, and we get our mandate, well, from the band members. And there are really 5 different departments in our offices, and those departments all have directors, and they answer to Chief and Council through the band administrator. I don't know if you can read that, but our health center is pretty. There's a lot of staff, but we get some of our funding through Health Canada as well as Indian Affairs. And basically, we do have a gym. We take requests from band members for health, and we have a sports authority. We deal with senior home care, and also we provide community health workshops on diabetes, better eating, health and fitness. Now, even though our housing and maintenance department is not very well, there's not a lot of staff, it's one of the bigger departments with a lot more responsibilities. And our First Nation, there's always the idea that if you live on a reserve, you don't own your home. But the members in our community, they do own their homes. They mortgage their homes, they pay for their homes. And then if you go on the reserve, you can see the pride that people put in their homes by the mere fact that they do own their own homes. But our housing and maintenance, we do look after CMHC requests, reporting. We do ministerial loan guarantees so that band members can actually get a mortgage at the bank. We look after insurance, winterization, bylaw enforcement. We have garbage pickup. We have a garage. We do snow removal. Infrastructure, and we also have a service that we provide in our community is night security. We don't have policing. But every night from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. we do have security that patrols the reserve for the safety of our community members and businesses that are located on reserve. And since we've enacted that security policy, we've basically had a huge reduction in any crime that happens in the community. We do have a department that's education, employment, and social, and we group those together because obviously if you're on social assistance, you're going to look for work. If you're a student, your end goal is to look for work. And we spend a lot of our money on education and trying as best we can to further our members' education. And you can see that by the fact that we have a zero dropout rate. We have less than 5% of our membership is on social, and we really encourage employment and education. So our largest department obviously is the administration department, and you can see that by looking at all the services that we provide. We do have, just like any government, we have a records department, we have a public relations officer, we have a membership registry coordinator, we have a finance department, a human resource department, and we have legal and governance. And basically a lot of our member requests flow through the administration. So that's pretty much how the office operates. I do want to talk a little bit about the provincial First Nation tax agreement and what does that mean. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of history about this because these agreements, particularly with Madawaska, was signed back in 1995. And how did this agreement come about? Basically, there was an issue with taxation, and there's a stereotype that, oh, Indians, they don't pay tax. But actually, Indians do pay tax. When you work in town, you pay income tax. If you own a home in town, you pay property tax. When you go to the store, you pay sales tax. Doesn't matter if you're a First Nation status Indian or not. So there's a lot of concern around that, but the thing is, when you do live on reserve, there is no tax. There's no property tax or income tax, but only if you work fully on reserve. And so there was a concern in the early 90s about the businesses saying, well, I have customers that are coming here and they can go to the reserve and buy things and not pay tax, but yet off reserve, they have to pay tax. So they lobbied to the provincial government, who at the time said, how can we fix this problem? There was a problem where it was an unfair playing field, where consumers could go and get things cheaper tax-free right next door than in town. So the province, in order to solve this problem, because it was a problem, they went to the First Nations and they said, listen, how about you collect the PST, because it wasn't HST at the time, it was PST. How about you collect the PST, remit it to us, and we'll give you back 95% of it. That way there, you'll still be able to have your tax, but at least it's a fair playing field for everyone. So not all 15 First Nations in the province agreed to that. At the time, I think it was only 7. And so in 1995, 7 First Nations signed agreement to collect the tax on behalf of the province. And what's important, and I think I'm going to read this, is they're in the preamble, the beginning of the agreement. This is what the province wrote. Whereas the parties are desirous of cooperating with each other so as to resolve the question as to the alleged entitlement to an exemption, whilst at the same time protecting the integrity of the provincial administration of tax in the province of New Brunswick. So they did this with the purpose to solve a problem. Now, they put in there the alleged entitlement, and this was in 1995, but in 1998, Supreme Court verified that, yes, First Nations do have the authority to create their own tax regime on reserve. But But First Nations didn't do that. Instead, we had an agreement with the province to collect the taxes of the province. And of course, when the GST came in, the First Nations started collecting the GST portion as well, remitting that to the province. And basically the agreement allowed for gaming self-licensing, fuel tax, tobacco tax, and sales tax. And 95% of the tax collected comes back to the First Nation. Now, why is that important for you? Well, it's very important because it's an influx of money back into the region. What does the First Nation do with that money? Well, we actually reinvest it back, and you can see from the Grey Rock Power Center, that just didn't come out of thin air. That comes from our reinvesting our dollars back into the community and creating employment. And some money does go to band members, but what do they do with that money? Well, they eat in restaurants in town, they purchase goods in town. So it's a huge benefit, not only to our First Nation, but also to the city of Edmundston and to the region at large. So, unfortunately, part of the agreement allowed for a 90-day termination, which means that the province or the First Nation could get out of this agreement with 90 days notice. And unfortunately, that notice had been given almost 3 months ago. So our tax agreements will likely, if the new government doesn't rescind or revoke that letter, our agreements may come to an end. And unfortunately, what it does is it puts us right back at square one to the problem of an unfair advantage, because if a First Nation can create their own tax regime, then we don't necessarily have to abide by what the province taxes are. We don't have any agreement to collect the GST on part of the federal government. And just a note on how well we've done, the GST that we collected last year and sent to the federal government, because the First Nation doesn't keep any of the GST, we gave the federal government more than half, almost double of what they gave us to operate our First Nation. So it just goes to show you that if we created our own tax regime, we wouldn't have to remit it to anybody. We can decide what percentage we want to give, and we would keep all of it. And that would probably anger quite a few of you in the room here, because then it would create an unfair playing field again. So, as a First Nation, we're looking for your support in going to the province to say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it was already broken and you did fix it, so why take that away? So we will be in discussions soon with the new Liberal government to find out what their approach to these revenue sharing agreements will be. But I just wanted to give people a little bit of information about those agreements, because there's a lot of information out there and unknowns that people don't understand how it works. But again, it's meant to solve this problem.